In the cold silence of space, the alien fleet moved like shadows across the stars. At the center of that fleet rested the throne ship of the alien queen. She was proud and powerful, and she had crushed many worlds. Her empire stretched far, and her voice brought fear to every planet. When she heard about humans, she thought of them as simple, weak creatures who depended on luck. She believed they could not stand against her armies. Her eyes shone with arrogance when she spoke about Earth, and her words were always filled with mockery. The war had started with small battles in the outer colonies. Alien ships attacked human outposts and destroyed them with ease. Human defenders fought bravely, but their weapons seemed weak against alien technology. The alien queen watched these fights through her grand screens, and she laughed. She told her council that humans were like insects trying to resist a storm. She said it was only a matter of time before Earth would kneel. Her soldiers cheered and believed in her vision. None of them questioned her judgment. None of them thought one human could change anything. In one brutal fight above a burning colony, a single human soldier was captured alive. The aliens dragged him in chains to the throne ship. The queen wanted to see him herself. She looked down from her tall seat as the human was pushed forward. He was wounded and covered with dust and blood. But his eyes were steady and cold. The queen studied him with curiosity. Then she smiled and asked why he fought when his people had no chance. The human gave no answer. He only stood tall even when guards shoved him to his knees. The queen waved her hand and called him nothing more than a small animal. She ordered him locked away as an example of human weakness. The alien guards laughed as they pulled him toward the prison chambers. They did not notice how his eyes moved quickly across the hall. He was watching the strange symbols on the walls. He was studying the blinking lights on their weapons. He did not look afraid. He looked focused. He walked silently and allowed them to think he was broken. But inside his mind a plan was already forming. Every step on the alien ship gave him more knowledge. Every insult made his will stronger. The queen returned to her throne room and forgot about him. For her it was nothing. For him it was the beginning. In the dark prison cell he sat alone. He closed his eyes and remembered the burning of his colony. He remembered the voices of his friends who had fallen. His heart burned with quiet fire. He promised himself that he would not die here as a prisoner. He would fight even if no one believed in him. The queen had underestimated the strength of one human spirit. Night cycle came on the alien ship and the halls grew quiet. The human sat in the shadows and listened to the strange hum of the engines. He counted the steps of the guards outside his cell. He watched how often they passed and how careless they were. His hands ached from the chains, but he pulled against them again and again until his skin tore. He felt the cold steel, but he did not give up. His mind worked like a weapon sharper than any blade. He began to understand the rhythm of the alien ship. He began to see patterns. And with each moment his chance grew closer. The alien queen dreamed of her victory and the end of humanity. She believed her throne was unshakable. She believed no human could ever stand against her empire. But in the heart of her ship a lone soldier was already preparing to prove her wrong. He was silent as stone, but his resolve was louder than any battle cry. He knew he was alone. He knew he had no weapons. Yet he also knew one truth. Sometimes one human was enough to change the fate of a war. The cell was small and the walls were alive with strange alien energy. The human sat on the floor with chains biting into his wrists. Every sound on the ship became a message to him. The low hum of the core told him where the engines were. The echo of footsteps told him how many guards moved nearby. He waited with patience while the aliens believed he was broken. They did not see how sharp his eyes were. They did not feel the silent storm growing inside him. When the guards came to mock him, he only lowered his head. They thought it was weakness, but it was calculation. He studied their weapons with quick glances. The strange rifles pulsed with light, and he noticed how the guards held them. He saw the small delay when they pressed the trigger. He noticed the belts they wore and the devices that blinked in patterns. Nothing escaped his watch. He was not wasting time. He was gathering weapons of knowledge. One night cycle the guards dragged him out for interrogation. The chamber was filled with bright blue light. At the center stood a tall alien commander who asked questions about human bases and weapons. The human gave no reply. He stood silent even when the commander struck him across the face. His blood fell on the shining floor, but his eyes never lost their fire. The commander grew angry and shouted. The alien queen was informed that the human would not speak. She laughed and told them to break his spirit slowly. She said fear would make him talk. She said humans always bend under pain. Her words were full of pride and certainty. The human was returned to his cell, but he was not weaker. In the darkness he smiled faintly because he had learned more. The corridors leading to the chamber, the locks on the doors, the way the guards walked with pride and carelessness. All of it became part of his silent map. He remembered every detail. He built a plan inside his head like a hidden machine. The guards did not fear him. They gave him stale food and water without care. They talked freely around him as if he could not understand. But he listened. He caught fragments of alien speech. Some words became familiar. He began to connect meanings. Bit by bit the language of the enemy opened to him. It was slow but steady. He did not need to speak it. He only needed to understand. The alien queen never came to see him again. To her, he was just a toy to be played with by her soldiers. She focused on the larger war. Human fleets were falling one by one and she felt proud. She told her council that humans were a dying race. She believed her empire was eternal. But deep inside her ship a soldier waited for his chance. His chains were heavy but his will was heavier. His body ached but his mind was sharper than steel. Every insult he received became a brick in the wall of his determination. Days passed in silence but his resolve did not fade. He scratched small marks on the wall with a broken piece of chain to count time. He waited for patterns. He waited for mistakes. And slowly he began to see that the aliens guarding him were not perfect. They grew lazy. They trusted too much in their queen's belief of human weakness. And that mistake would soon open a door that none of them expected. The human sat in his cell, but he was no longer only a prisoner. He had become a hunter waiting in silence. Every guard who passed by gave him new knowledge. He learned the timing of their patrols. He learned which ones were proud and careless. He noticed one guard who often stopped to check his wrist device. The soldier leaned against the bars without worry, as if the chains inside would never move. The human studied this weakness with cold patience. One cycle the guard dropped a small piece of alien metal near the bars. It was sharp on one side and thin like a shard. The alien never noticed. The human waited until the sound of footsteps faded before he bent down slowly and slid the shard close with his chained fingers. It was small, but it was the first tool he owned since capture. He hid it under the dirty cloth where the guards would not see. His heart beat steady. His weapon was not strength but silence. The alien queen was busy celebrating another victory. A human fleet had been destroyed near a distant colony. She told her generals that soon Earth itself would burn. Her pride grew larger with each report. She never asked about the soldier locked in her ship. She thought one human could never matter. Her council agreed with her words because they feared her power. None of them saw the danger of ignoring him. Back in the prison chamber, the human used the shard carefully against his chain. Each night he scraped a little. He worked slowly to avoid sound. The progress was small, but he never gave up. His wrists bled, but he welcomed the pain. It reminded him of what he had lost. It reminded him of why he fought. He whispered no words, yet inside his heart a vow burned stronger than fire. He would escape. He would strike back. He would show the queen what one human could do. One evening 2 guards argued outside his cell. Their voices were sharp and angry. The human understood a few words. He caught the meaning of engine and core. He realized something was wrong in the ship. He listened closely and learned about a minor failure near the energy system. The guards were careless to speak near him, but they never imagined he could understand. The human smiled in the darkness. He now knew the heart of the ship was not perfect. It had weaknesses like its queen. The shard grew thinner as he scraped and one chain link weakened. The sound of a crack made his heart race, but no guard heard it. He quickly covered it and waited. His chance was near, but he knew he must move with precision. One mistake could end him. He studied the steps of the careless guard again and again. He knew when the guard would stop near his cell. He knew when the hall would be empty. The moment was coming closer. The alien queen gave another order to her armies. She demanded faster destruction of human defenses. She believed humans were almost finished. She smiled with victory in her eyes. Yet inside her ship the prisoner she mocked was shaping the first step of his rebellion. He had no army. He had no weapons. But he had courage, patience, and a mind that refused to break. The night of silence was turning into the night of action. Soon the chains would fall and the queen would face the storm she never saw coming. The shard finally cut through the last of the chain. The human's wrists were raw and bleeding, but he no longer cared. For the first time since his capture he could move freely. He kept the broken chain wrapped loosely around his arms to make it appear he was still bound. He waited in silence for the careless guard who always lingered near the bars. When the alien stopped once again to check his wrist device, the human struck like lightning. The chain looped around the guard's neck and pulled tight. The alien gasped and struggled, but the human did not release until the body fell limp. He caught the wrist device before it hit the floor and dragged the body into the shadows of the cell. He examined the strange device with sharp focus. It glowed with alien symbols, but he had studied enough to understand patterns. He tapped carefully and the lock on his cell door clicked open. The sound was soft, but to him it was thunder. Freedom had come at last. He stepped into the hallway with careful steps. His heart pounded, but his mind stayed cold. Every move had to be perfect. One wrong step and alarms would end him. The halls of the alien ship stretched in both directions, glowing with eerie blue light. He pulled the fallen guard's weapon from its holster. It felt heavy and strange, but he held it firm. He remembered the delay he had studied before and knew how to aim. He crouched low and moved through the corridors, listening for the sound of other patrols. His breath was steady, his eyes sharp. Every shadow became his ally. Every silence was his shield. In the throne chamber the alien queen sat on her high seat. She was told that the prisoner had been checked and was still silent. She laughed and said he would break soon. She thought of him as nothing more than a distraction. She focused instead on her fleets preparing for the next strike on Earth. She never imagined that at that very moment the human was already walking free inside her own ship. Her pride blinded her to the truth. The human reached a junction where he could see the glowing heart of the ship in the distance. Strange machines pulsed with power. He remembered the guards arguing about the core and the failure. Now he saw with his own eyes where the weakness lived. He crouched in the shadows and studied the patterns of energy. He could feel the vibration of the engines through the floor. He realized the ship was not unbreakable. If he struck here, he could wound the Queen's empire. But first he needed to survive. Footsteps echoed from the other corridor. 2 alien guards appeared, weapons ready but eyes lazy. They did not expect danger inside their own ship. The human raised his stolen weapon and fired. The shot cracked with bright light and one guard fell instantly. The other turned in shock, but the human was faster. He fired again and silence filled the hall. The weapon hummed in his hands and he felt the power of the enemy now becoming his tool. He dragged the bodies aside and pressed forward. His escape was no longer just survival. It was the start of war inside the Queen's throne ship. He had no army. He had no allies. Yet each step he took shook the foundation of her pride. The Queen had underestimated one human and soon she would learn what kind of storm had entered her heart of power. The ship trembled as alarms finally began to echo through the corridors. The human's escape had been discovered. Red lights flashed across the walls and alien voices shouted orders. Soldiers rushed to search every hall, but he was already moving toward the heart of the ship. He carried the stolen weapon in one hand and the guard's wrist device in the other. His eyes were sharp and calm. He knew there was no turning back. The Queen would soon learn that her throne was not safe. He slipped through the corridors, using shadows and silence as his armor. When patrols appeared he struck fast, firing before they could raise alarms. Each shot was precise, each move a step closer to the core. Alien soldiers who once laughed at him now lay defeated in their own ship. Fear began to spread among them. Some whispered that the human was a ghost, impossible to catch. The legend of one man began inside their walls even before the Queen knew the truth. In the throne chamber, reports arrived one after another. Guards were missing. A patrol was gone. Strange weapon fire was detected near the energy core. The Queen rose from her throne with anger burning in her eyes. She shouted that it was impossible. She refused to believe one prisoner could cause such chaos. Her generals lowered their heads, afraid to speak against her words, but doubt had already entered their hearts. Something was happening that none of them could deny. The human reached the great chamber of the ship's core. The room was alive with light and sound. Pulses of energy surged through crystal machines that powered the entire vessel. He stood at the edge, feeling the vibration of raw power under his feet. He studied the patterns, remembering the overheard words of the guards. The system had weaknesses. If struck at the right point, the heart of the ship could be wounded. He gripped the alien weapon tighter and aimed at the glowing conduits. Before he could fire, heavy doors opened and a squad of alien soldiers rushed in. They surrounded him, weapons raised, voices full of rage. The human dropped low and fired first. Beams of light filled the chamber. Explosions ripped across the machines as stray shots hit the walls. He moved fast, using cover and precision. One by one the soldiers fell, but their fire struck the machines as well. The core began to shake violently. Sparks of energy leapt across the room. The human realized the ship was now a ticking storm. The Queen was informed that the core was under attack. Her anger turned to fury. She demanded to face the human herself. She would show her empire that no human could challenge her rule. She left her throne and marched toward the heart of the ship. She carried her own weapon, a blade forged from alien crystal, glowing with deadly light. Her soldiers followed, but fear was written in their eyes. They had seen what one man had already done. The human stood alone in the trembling chamber, smoke rising around him, sparks falling like fire rain. He reloaded the alien weapon and tightened his grip. He knew she was coming. He knew this was the moment. The duel was no longer about one prisoner. It was about humanity standing against the Empire. The alien Queen had underestimated him, and now she was walking into the storm he had created. The chamber shook as the alien Queen entered, her crystal blade glowing with deadly light. Smoke curled through the air and sparks danced from broken machines. The human stood at the center of the storm, weapon ready, eyes steady. Around them the core pulsed like a living heart, trembling under the damage already done. The Queen stepped forward with pride still shining in her face. She called him weak and foolish for standing alone against an empire. Her voice echoed across the chamber, but the human did not answer. His silence was stronger than her words. She struck first, her blade cutting through the air with blinding speed. The human dodged and fired, beams of light clashing against her weapon. The chamber filled with thunder and fire as the two fought among the trembling machines. Each strike from the Queen was heavy with power, but each move of the human was sharp with precision. He knew he could not match her strength, so he used her pride against her. He forced her closer to the unstable conduits, each step bringing them nearer to destruction. The Queen roared with fury and swung her blade in a wide arc. The human rolled aside and fired at a glowing crystal tower. The explosion shook the floor and energy surged wildly through the chamber. The Queen stumbled for the first time, her pride breaking into anger and fear. She turned to strike again, but the human had already moved. He fired one last shot into the core. Light burst across the room like a rising sun. The machines screamed as power spiraled out of control. The Queen fell to her knees, her blade shattering in her hand. She looked up at the human with disbelief. Her empire had conquered worlds, yet one man had brought her to the edge of defeat. She whispered that it was impossible. The human stood tall and spoke at last. He told her that humans were never weak. They were stubborn, they were clever, and they never gave up. His voice carried through the smoke like a promise of survival. The core erupted behind them. The ship trembled and alarms screamed. The human turned and walked toward the exit as the Queen collapsed in silence. He did not look back. The alien throne ship shook apart piece by piece, and through the chaos one figure escaped into the stars. He carried no army, no throne, and no crown. He carried only the fire of his spirit. Far away, human survivors would hear the story of the soldier who stood against the queen. His name would become a spark of hope in the darkest night. The alien queen had underestimated one human, and that mistake had changed the war forever.